Hello friends, welcome back to Strategic Management. We are trying to build up our story, we are trying to build up our concept around strategically managing value chains. That is the point where we have reached in the last session, where Michael Porter's contribution in terms of value chain was briefly described to you with reference to resources, capabilities and core competencies, and before that we went for IO model and resource based model of above average rate of returns, and before that we tried to build up a story wherein we tried to understand the flow of strategy as a pathway from vision to goals, and then backwards from this side to that side to this side in terms of strategic steps now. And we have been building up a case around competitive advantage, and now we would traverse from competitive advantage, or I would not say from competitive advantage, I would say with the perspective of competitive advantage, but bypassing the competition, pushing the competition aside. But before we do that, we will try to first reflect upon competition based strategy and the thoughts, and then we would try to see that what are the elements which can be seen differently, and then we would go for pushing the competition aside. So, we will start our discussion with reference to red ocean, wherein Michael Porter has contributed a lot with the perspective of how competitive landscape should be seen, and competitive advantage should be built by facing the competition, by beating the competition. And then within the same session, we will be talking about how things should traverse from red ocean towards, we would not say where, but definitely it is blue ocean. So, we will be going for using the references of Michael Porter and W. Chan Kim. So, Michael Porter for putting up the advantages around competition based thought process, and W. Chan Kim's references to justify a particular gap within that thought process, and then proposing blue ocean in my next two sessions. So, that is how we would be going on. Let us see what Michael Porter has to say. Does competition shape strategy? Yes, it does. It is an acknowledged fact. We look around with the perspective of competition. I am producing a toothpaste, so definitely who is the competitor? I am printing and publishing a newspaper, who is the other publisher? What kind of news they are publishing? What is their orientation? I am a channel, some other channel, why customers shift from this channel to other channel, and what kind of a news competition they are giving, what kind of a prime time story they are covering, and what kind of a prime time story should I be covering, what kind of perspective should I be having, what kind of guests should I be having, what my competition is doing altogether, how would I be able to increase my TRP ratings, and how they are doing that. Every single element with reference to competition in our minds. X motorcycle is selling well, my motorcycle should also sell well, X car is selling well, my car should also sell well, and so on. So, you see, there is always competition in our minds basically, and the initial most thought around strategy started and initiated from that, wherein we tried to put up an Indian context to that, but in contemporary text it started from defeating the army, defeating the opposite army, strategos, you remember the first one or two sessions we talked about. So, here we go with the perspective of what Professor Michael Porter has to say. He talked about this in How Competitive Forces Shape Strategy, published by Macmillan Education UK in 1989. And because he propelled five forces model, he actually structured that, he was the author of that. So, he proposed that. So, as the paper says, and Michael Porter talks about that, the importance of competition and the factors that it depends on was discussed by Porter's five forces earlier, and as we discussed also earlier, but Michael Porter also talks about, because he gave five forces with context to, and then he started putting up competitive perspective around that. So, and you see these five forces are threat of new entrants, bargaining power of customers, bargaining power of suppliers, threat of substitute products or services, and current competitive rivalries. So, these are the elements wherein five forces, and then we discussed that. Assessing the forces. Now, here I would suggest you to pay little more attention on this very specific line. Assessing the forces will allow one to understand their inherent strengths and weaknesses. According to this, a strategy can be devised for the organization to plan ahead. So, here it is referring to planning, we have talked about that, but assessing the forces will allow to one to understand their inherent strength and weaknesses. So, we have to analyze the forces to understand our strengths and weaknesses, what is in our favor and what may not be in our favor in due course of time. The paper further adds, the basic strategies devised could be two: positioning the company so that its capabilities provide the best defense against competitive forces. We have talked about resources, capabilities and core competence. So, that its capabilities provide the best defense against competitive forces. Now, here we are talking about defense. Many times we may talk about offense also, that is forcefully pushing the competition and beating the competition. Influencing the balance of the forces through strategic moves. Now, here strategically we have to create a balance between the forces as well. Does it remind you of economics and does it remind you of physics also somehow? If you want, you can think in terms of forces the similar way as well. So, through strategic moves and by that improving the position of the company. So, positioning of the company in the minds of the customer and improving that positioning through balance of the forces, anticipating shifts. Now, here it is very important, anticipating shifts in the factors underlying the forces. So, factors which are responsible for the forces. Now, let us quickly visit the 5 forces. Threat of new entrants. What may be the factors associated with new entrants? That is what we have to analyze. When we say bargaining power of customers, what may be the factors associated with the bargaining power of customers? That definitely can be in terms of alternatives also. That means distantly related products or unrelated products which may fulfill the similar kind of a need as well. So, that can be a perspective also. It is just a thought. Try to understand that forces, they are dependent on some factors which would shape them. So, factors underlying the forces and responsible for them, and I would suggest that you list down these factors, these forces and try to associate factors associated with these forces, so as to change to a strategy appropriate for new competitive balance. Here first the paper talks about defense, then competitive balance, that is creating a particular kind of a space within the industry, wherein I am not focusing upon just to defeat the competition, but to create a competitive balance, because here we are focusing upon the forces as of now. Then formulating the strategy which is associated with positioning the company, and the paper says positioning the company, a strategy can be a defense against competitive forces or finding a position in the industry where the forces are weakest. Defense or focusing upon as far as the weakest space. Key to the position is understanding the company's capabilities. Whole situation is around our preceding discussion on identifying our resources, then thinking of those resources with the perspective of shaping our capabilities and taking those towards becoming developing our core competencies. So, key to the position is understanding the company's capabilities. If a company is a low cost producer, now here you should mark these words, and this paper is very important that way, or this text is very important, sorry for that reason. If a company is a low cost producer, it can confront powerful buyers while it takes care to sell them only products not vulnerable to competition from substitutes. Now, for example, CRED, and that we have taken from their website as per the current description. So, we are in today is 1st of April 2024. So, it is as per the current description. So, CRED is a good example of a fintech startup playing to its capabilities by targeting high spending credit card users and providing them with credit card management and reward platform. So, that is how we may think of. You may put in different kinds of examples with the perspective of formulating the strategy and positioning of the company. You may take banking examples also, you may take cosmetics also, you may take perfumes also, you may take shoes also. you may think of anything around you also. Just look around and try to analyze, as far as what kind of a positioning this company has in your mind, and I am talking of organizational positioning, which definitely is reflected through the product positioning, of course. Then next is influencing the balance. The company can also go on to offensive foot and devise a strategy when dealing with the forces that drive the industry competition, the author says. This helps not just in coping with the changes, but also in altering the causes. So, coping with the changes which are emerging, and altering the causes as such, influencing the causes also. So, identification of the causes, that is when we look at the factors associated with the forces. So, we can alter the causes in association with influencing the balance. Innovations in marketing, capital investment in large scale facilities or vertical integrations can be part of these strategies. And Saregama Karma, taken from their website also, can be an example. You can think in terms of Boeing also, you can think in terms of Airbus also, you can think in terms of automotive manufacturers like Toyota in India, or other car manufacturers, Tatas and so on, and Maruti Suzuki, why not, basically. And you can think in terms of when they came up with Nexa, whole new brand, and started putting up several kinds of cars associated with that brand. You can talk of Brezza, and you can talk of Scorpio N, you can talk of XUV 700, and products in relation to organizational perspective. So, definitely products reflect the organizational perspective, and organizational perspective is reflected on the products, and positioning of the company is definitely related to the positioning of the product somehow, because that is the front which company puts up in front of you in form of a tangible product or the services which are definitely intangible. Exploiting industry change. Industry evolution is important because it brings changes in the sources of competition. As growth rates change, product differentiation declines, and as the business becomes more mature, the companies tend to integrate vertically. We have talked about that in industry life cycle, and that is why this makes logical sense when we talk about this special vertical integration. That means taking your own supply chain in your hands, basically trying to become your own supplier and then your own retailer from both the sides, basically. So, vertically integrating, basically focusing upon your own supply chain. So, now it makes sense when we talk of industry life cycle also, because when author says that industry evolution is important because it brings changes in the sources of competition. As growth rate changes, we talked about that in industry life cycle, and product differentiation declines when everything gets standardized. Consider the case of mobile manufacturing. We talked about that in earlier segment also. Vertical integration in this industry is increasing both in manufacturing and software development. This in turn raises economies of scale as well as the amount of capital necessary to compete in the industry. We talked about laptop industry, we talked about computer industry, we talked about several other kinds of industries in our last segment when we were talking of industry life cycle. And I remember we talked about EVs, and there were other examples which we took as case studies and so on. Video streaming organizations also, we talked about that industry when we were referring about Netflix and that industry at large. Now, let us see what W. Chan Kim has to say, and here the story starts. You see, up till now we have been building our understanding around competition and focusing upon competition, which has predominantly been the call of this world all through, and still companies are focusing upon that. Organizations and organizational leaders who are technically blue ocean experts are following blue ocean strategy. They also have been found talking about competition with the perspective wherein they refer to competition as if they are fighting to defeat the competition, although they are not doing that many a times. So, you may attend to YouTube speeches of several kinds of organizational leaders who are experts in blue ocean strategy, which we will see how are they experts. I would be using some of those examples to justify that. But when you will look at their videos, you would realize that they somehow forget that they are into blue oceans, and they start referring to competition with the same kind of a perspective, and that is where W. Chan Kim adds to our understanding and knowledge when he says that there are some inherent aspects in red ocean perspective and framework which should be thought of carefully. According to W. Chan Kim and his co-author Rennie Mauborgne, that a red ocean are all the industries in existence today, also known as the market space. Practically, he describes that there is a market space and almost all the industries are red oceans because they are fighting a war. And he talks about this thing in Blue Ocean Strategy, how to create uncontested market space and make the competition irrelevant, Harvard Business Review Press. Further, he adds that in a red ocean, the industry boundaries are defined and accepted. He is describing, how we look at the scenarios, and competitive rules of the game are known. Coke would do this, Pepsi would do that, Huggies would do that, Pampers would do that, X would do that, Y would do that. The strategy for the companies is hence to outperform their rivals and grab a greater share of existing demand. That is in general, how we go about. Channels we have talked about. The prospects for profits and growth become reduced as the market space becomes more crowded. Now, several players are coming. For example, industry is attractive. For example, media industry became attractive at one part of time, and several people started entering into that space, and somehow it became crowded and overwhelmed. The products can become commodities, and there is a cutthroat competition. It has been in case of salt, it has been in case of sugar, it has been in case of masale, several kinds of masalas. It has been in case of detergents, it has been in case of several other kinds of industries, which W. Chan Kim points out. Then he further adds, or both the authors they further add, that strategic thinking traditionally has been focusing on competition based red ocean strategies. This can be partly because of the influence of the roots of military strategy in the corporate strategy realm. The strategy has been framed to confront opponents and fight over a specific part that we have been discussing. We have come to know that yes, this is the thing. Competition based red ocean strategy assumes that an industry's structural conditions are given and firms are forced to compete within them. An assumption based on what the academics call the structuralist view or environmental determinism, that this is how this would go. When I look at management education, similar kind of a thought process exists basically, that B school is doing this, we should be doing that. They have this kind of a syllabus, our syllabus is that kind of. I do not know why, but somehow students, they have been seen as customers, which I do not subscribe to individually. This is my personal view. Students must be seen as products developed for the industry to make a difference. I have been talking about this point several times, but somehow we went off to a different kind of a view, and today we have entered into different kinds of ratings and rankings based on students' placements, fee structures, infrastructure we provide to the students, and several other things which are a reflection of how things are being bought basically. If you agree with this kind of a view, you would realize why management education has reached to a particular kind of a space wherein cutthroat structural perspective is cutthroat competition and structural perspective has emerged. If we would not have seen that way, then it would have been a different kind of a story. Try to analyze that, try to assimilate that. Nowadays, admission interviews are going on at Department of Management Studies, IIT Roorkee, and we have been interacting with several kinds of students, and students have been using a particular kind of a term called ROI. I do not understand this term personally, and I do not subscribe to this term personally, because you see, education has to be seen with a perspective of very, very, very long term kind of a gain. It is neither an expenditure nor an investment basically. Because if I look at my education individually, if I would look at that with the perspective of investments, then it would have given me the returns which are more than any sort of investment in this world. Can you find such an investment where there is no risk and ultimate gains? Can we look at the investment with that kind of a perspective? I may be exaggerating when I am talking about these kind of things, and people may differ, but these are my personal views. So, and expenditure, again it is in terms of value, but the education has different kind of a value at the end of the day. In their research on managers executing market creating strategies, W. Chan Kim and Rennie Mauborgne identified a few common factors that consistently undermined their efforts. They termed them as their mental models or ingrained assumptions. Now, you see, that is what we are talking of. What kind of a perspective we are carrying about the world around us, about the competition around us, about the industry we are in, about the functions we are in, about the society, the culture, the values we are in. And this is a general perspective, but here we are talking of competitive perspective. So, what is the perspective, what is the mental model we have about this world basically? A structuralist approach has a reflection of when we start looking at things, everything with a structural perspective, that this is how the industry structure is, this is how the social structure is, this is how every sort of structure. So, that is fair. So, mental models are ingrained assumptions and theories about the way the world works, that this is framed, this is how it has to be, this is how it should be, extremely quantified expression of what we intend to do or what we should be doing. If I do this, this is how it would be responded to. If I say this, this is how people would respond to. It is a general view, but then organizations respond to and they assume the response in terms of a very structured kind of a framework. So, individualistic thought, collective thought and organizational thought are no different. At one particular part of time, it is the perspective which matters, and it traverses from individuals to organizations to societies and backwards also. Mental models have their share of merits, as they can help make quick decisions that are critical for survival. Yes, and Daniel Kahneman has talked about that at length. However, the same mental models that managers rely on to negotiate existing market space were not effective enough in their ability to create new market space. Organizations, they stagnated. We have talked about in organizational life cycle, in industry life cycle, and we have seen that in product life cycles in marketing as well. Somehow we keep on focusing upon expanding the market, and then we keep on going up the hill. Organizations also try to do that, and after a particular stage we just get tired of it, and many organizations, they decline. Now, authors further add that there are 6 specific assumptions which are built into managers' mental models. Now, this is very interesting, and this can be seen with an individual perspective also, social perspective also, and definitely organizational perspective at this moment. These assumptions are called red ocean traps, as they effectively anchor managers in the red ocean. The first 2 traps stem from assumptions about marketing, in particular an emphasis on customer orientation and niches. The next 2 from economic lessons on technology innovation and creative destruction. And the final 2 from the principles of competitive strategy that regard differentiation and low cost as mutually exclusive choices. And you will see in Blue Ocean Strategy in my next session that that is how authors actually nullified that basically at the end of the day. Now, trap 1, seeing market creating strategies as customer oriented approaches. Existing market creating strategies are customer led, and hence managers mostly focus on existing customers and how to make them happier. W. Chan Kim observed this in case of several kinds of organizations. So, making existing customers happier somehow, keep on consistently pushing towards how to make them more happy, even if they may not become happy after a particular kind of a stage, whatever you do. But to create new markets, no, I am not saying that they would not remain happy, but to create new markets, there is a need to turn the focus on non-customers and why they are refusing the offerings from an organization or industry. Are they tired of that without any reason, or they might have expected something else and they found that need to be fulfilled by your product, but not exactly that way. It is a matter of happiness which you are looking for in terms of your customers. They are seemingly happy, but they are not happy somehow, and they express that when they find the alternative. Sony focused on improving e-readers' legibility to please current customers, but Amazon's Kindle addressed the number 1 concern of non-buyers: too few available titles, which ultimately benefit Amazon. Trap 2, treating market creating strategies as niche strategies. In marketing, there is an emphasis on identifying and capturing niche markets. However, uncovering a niche in an existing market is not the same and impactful as identifying a new market space. You keep on going towards up the hill, adding premium value to everything basically, and you're creating premium segments, and then adding lots of features to a product or a service, and after a particular stage, no scope. That happens many a times. Delta tried to go with a very niche category of flyers, professional women flyers, through their Song airline, which did not do comfortably well as Delta would have expected. Somehow data might add some element to this discussion. Trap 3, confusing technology innovation with market creating strategies. R&D and technology innovation are widely recognized as key drivers of market development and industry growth. It's understandable therefore that managers might assume that they are also key drivers in the discovery of new markets. And here W. Chan Kim talks about new markets arise from value innovation, and not only, here I would try to put up word only from my side according to my understanding, not refuting the author at all, with due respect and reference to the author, not only tech innovation. So, value innovation is the key. That is what, for example, he talks about Cirque du Soleil, Starbucks, although Cirque du Soleil, closed down their business few years back, but by when the authors were observing this organization, they were doing exceptionally well, and definitely they were added as a very brilliant and a prime example in their book, and I think it was the first example they chose to talk about. Trap 4, equating creative destruction with market creation. Creative destruction occurs when an invention disrupts a market by displacing an earlier technology or existing product or service. Digital photography, for example, wiped out the photographic film industry, becoming the new norm. However, market space creation can also have non-destructive creation. The introduction of Grameen Bank, and this is an important example, ladies and gentlemen, I wish for you to remember this, that Grameen Bank did not destroy the existing financial and banking infrastructure, but rather paved the way for microfinancing. Here W. Chan Kim is taking us mildly towards the blue ocean framework, which is very intelligent of him. Conflating market creation with creating destruction not only limits an organization's set of opportunities, but also sets off resistance to market creating strategies. Trap 5, differentiation is the strategic position in a competitive industry in which a company stands out from competitors by providing premium value. This is a trap, as he says. The other authors may refute to that, but this is a counter view from that side. We are not subscribing to any particular view, which he would also do in the next segment. The trade-off is usually higher cost to the companies and the higher prices for customers. Many managers assume that market creation is the same. In reality, a market creating move breaks the value cost trade-off. It is about pursuing differentiation and low cost simultaneously. That is what he proposes for. Trap 6, equating market creating strategies with low cost strategies. This is the mental model when organizations see market creating strategies as synonymous with low cost strategies alone. They focus on what to eliminate and reduce in current offerings and largely ignore what they should improve or create to increase the offering's value. A new market does not have to be created at the low end of the industry. Instead, it can be created at the high end, as Dyson did in vacuum cleaners. And this is the most important part which author says, and I conclude this session with this part, when by describing briefly what authors talk about. At the end of the day, they do not disregard red ocean, and they do not disregard the perspective around red ocean as a strategic perspective, but they try to add on the perspective of blue ocean. They say that, is red ocean strategy bad? So further the authors add that strategies presented as the red ocean traps are not wrong or bad. Very important, and so nice of them to acknowledge that. They all serve important purposes. A customer focus, for example, can improve products and services, and technology innovation is a key input for market development and economic growth. Likewise, differentiation or low cost is an effective competitive strategy which has worked for many companies for a number of years. However, in order to create new market space, organizations must start thinking outside this frame, and this is where the relevance of blue ocean arises. I would be coming back to you in my next session with what is blue ocean strategy. Till then, goodbye.